All right, making sure this is still working well. Okay.
That reminds me of the Scott Pilgrim quote, the one that's like, be good, knives. Oh, I'll be good? No, be good. Am I not normally good? You're like, roll with me. Okay? No, roll with me.
Okay. Welcome to a special episode of the Kaiju Apostle podcast. My name is David, and joining me in the living room studio is the... I don't know, you're awesome, I guess. In the flesh. The fleshly flesh. Is Chris. I would ask you how you're doing, but we've been hanging out for the past 4 hours, 5 hours. So.
And we don't know how we're doing.
No, we just got done watching Rise of Skywalker, and a lot of thoughts.
Yeah, some good, some bad, some neutral.
Yeah.
Some lots of beer needed.
Yes. Neutral is a very good way to put it. I didn't hate it.
No.
So there's that.
There's that. We'll watch it again.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like the people who really need to watch it are the ones who aren't going to after The Last Jedi, which kind of sucks.
Yeah.
But, you know, it is what it is. But we were planning on reviewing King of the Monsters tonight because that's everyone's favorite film, right? And everyone's been dying to hear about what we had to say. But
just under Godzilla 98.
Yeah. And then we in the Hanna-Barbera cartoon too. But we got a message from some random person and kind of decided to change trajectories a little bit tonight. But yeah, so it does sound a little bit different because we are sitting here together. Not going to be able to do as much post-production and editing, so bear with us as there might be a little bit more rough around the edges. But
compared to our usual polish.
Yeah.
Our usual.
Oh, I know. Our NPR quality recording. But yeah, let's check out this message and figure out what's actually going to happen tonight, because I feel like this will be fun.
Well, happy holidays, David and Chris. I hope you guys are all bundled up and warmed up for the Christmas season. I just thought I would send you your white behemoth for this year, and hopefully this tradition continues. And yes, for those who don't realize who this savory voice is, it is the dear old host of It Came From a Monster Movie, Henry the Host. And, you know, David and I came up with this idea a while back, and I really thought about what exactly the movie you guys should be watching for the holiday season as your white behemoth, you know, like giant monster white elephant. So I am gifting you Gamera the Super Monster, the 1980 sci-fi action film, which has currently a 3.8 out of 10 on IMDb, 53% on Google like this movie, and I hope you enjoy this giant prehistoric turtle being the only hope for Earth's survival after a group of giant monsters invade the planet. Enjoy the stock footage, because this is a stocking keeper for you guys. Happy holidays.
Where was this humor when he was on with us?
Yeah. So, before we get too deep into this, because we'll be completely honest, I've never seen this film. Chris has never seen a Gamera film, ever.
Period.
I actually showed him a clip of Gamera versus Guiron, where Guiron completely skewers the Gaios. And what were your thoughts about that?
So that was kind of funny because it seems like, it's so violent, despite the fact there was no blood until he was beheaded.
Yeah, it was purple goo.
Just the sheer physics of the scene where he's flying through the sky to chop his wing off, frontward facing. Incredible.
Oh, hey Mallory, how are you? That's I would say not our beautiful wife, my beautiful wife. It's only mine.
Let the record show.
Yeah. So if you're gonna say something, choose your words wisely, because we are recording. She's got nothing. Okay. So, yeah, this is to give you a little bit of context. So Henry, who was on our last episode, we came up with this white behemoth idea instead of white elephant, because behemoth is kind of like a sloth elephant, right? we wanted to choose like the worst films we could think of. So for his podcast, I chose The Day Time Ended, which if you watch any recent seasons of Mystery Science Theater 3000, you know exactly which film I'm talking about. And yeah, they were absolutely flabbergasted after they got done watching it. And I think I made an enemy out of Luba, his co-host that time. But, you know, we wanted to do something a little bit different here. And obviously choosing this film, it isn't really going to be something I don't feel like we're going to have a lot to talk about after. Maybe we will. Maybe we won't. I don't know. So our goal here is to kind of salvage this as much as we can. And then we talked about probably doing a little bit of like a methodology discussion after that. So if that's something you're more interested in, I'll figure out what the timing is and I'll leave that in the show notes if you just want to skip ahead to that. Maybe we'll talk about Rise of Skywalker a little bit. I don't know.
It's a real big if.
Yeah, really big if. Depends on how many beers we get through into this. But before we get into the film, we wanted to go ahead and give a shout out to the people who have already become our patrons. Very, very thankful for that. So that's kind of one of our things is, you know, whether it's the bottom tier or the top tier, you know, we want to make sure to thank everyone who's donated. So just want to give a shout out to Eli. I've been chatting with him for a while. He's actually one of the first people to encourage us to start the Patreon. So thank you, Eli.
Yeah, thank you, Eli.
And then Henry. We all know Henry now.
Even when he's not on the show, he's dominating.
Yeah. So thanks, Henry. And then we have Doug.
Oh, that's Dad. Hey, Dad. Thanks, Dad.
Yeah. Thanks for your money. And then we have Travis. So I met him through a Facebook group. He has a podcast as well. It's Kaiju Weekly. So they cover a lot of just newer events and different kaiju films. Really awesome guy to know. So definitely make sure to check out his podcast. And then I have Nick. So I know Nick through we tried starting a studio project, Godzilla, a little kaiju based, and he's a phenomenal metal drummer. I'll make sure to put his band. You can follow them, and I'll put that in the show notes as well. So again, just wanted to make sure to give a shout out to everyone. Again, Henry, it came from a Monster Movie podcast. Make sure to listen to them if you don't already, because they are getting ready to do season 2 here pretty soon.
And not that I want to say this to Henry's face, so I'll say it while we're recording. It was the first one I listened to, and it was actually fun. So I'm putting my hypothetical money where your real money is.
Yeah. So let's just dive right into this. Gamera Super Monster. So we're currently in the 60s for our movies we chose to watch, and now we're fast forwarding to 1980, which you would think by this point the effects would be better, but here we are. So Google synopsis for this film is: a giant prehistoric turtle is the only hope for Earth's survival after a group of giant monsters invades the planet. So on paper, it sounds fine.
Yeah.
Right? So staff is directed by Noriaki Yuasa. He is actually the director of every Showa era Gamera film except Gamera vs. Barugon. You are going to find there's Baragon and Barugon.
Oh,
so.
Is it like the boy and girl version?
No.
Oh.
No. Screenplay was by Nissan Takahashi. So he's the screenwriter for all 8 Gamera films. Produced by, and there's several producers, which...
That sounds strange.
Yeah. Clearly they put their heads together for this one. Hirozaki Oba, Shigeru Shinohara, Yasuyoshi Tokuma, and Masaya Tokuyama. Now, here's the fun part, is music is by Shunsuke Kikuchi. Does that ring a bell to you?
Sounds familiar.
Yeah, so he's done music for Dragon Ball, Dragon Ball Z, other Gamera films, Gokei, The Body Snatcher from Hell, which is in my drawer, my shelf, and I've been wanting to watch that, and also Kamen Rider.
Okay, that makes sense, because like some of the Dragon Ball movies have the same logo as the Godzilla ones, which is funny.
Yeah, but that's Godzilla's Toho. This is Daiei.
But what's okay? Well, we'll Google this after.
Yeah.
But yeah, I started watching Kamen Rider the other day on
ya?
YouTube. Yeah.
Yeah. I'd say I haven't watched any of those shows. I mean, I'm interested, but I just
There's only
too
so much Japanese culture we can imbue.
Yeah. So special effects is also by Noriaki Yuasa. So he directed and did special effects.
Oh.
That's interesting.
Is that a accolade or is that a...
We'll find out. So cast, I wrote everybody down and you can look it up. I mean, honestly, I have a feeling we're not going to remember any of these. There's Mach Fumiaki is Kilara, Yeiko Kojima is Marsha, Yoku Komatsu is Maitan, Keiko. See, and that's the thing. I don't even know if I'm pronouncing these names right. I haven't watched it, so we're just going to move on. So to give you a little context about this film, because that's important, right?
Yes.
That's what our podcast is about, is context. So according to Stuart Galbraith, who is a scholar of Japanese film and TV, this film was made to help Daiei, the production company, get out of a deep financial hole.
Oh, okay.
So that's the only reason this film exists. It's like, how do we try to get us out of this problem?
Well,
We'll find out if it succeeded. So, fun fact is only roughly 2 minutes worth of new Gamera footage in the film, as stock footage takes up a third of the film.
good lord.
Yeah. Yeah, so Henry
That's
wasn't wrong about stocking.
40 minutes.
Yeah. So,
Oh.
I didn't have the poster pulled up for you, but I'll do that really quick for you, Chris. So on the poster and in the film, we're going to notice something pretty interesting. And since we just got out of Star Wars, this is relevant. What does that look like to you?
Oh, okay, well, he's jetting towards the Star Destroyer.
Yeah.
Oh.
So.
Like, legitimate.
Mm-hmm.
That's hilarious. That's the Corvus from Battlefront 2.
Yeah. So that's part of why Henry chose this film, because he knows we like Star Wars. So
Thanks, Henry.
yeah, appreciate that. And then lastly, because let's be honest, apart from jokes, there's not a lot written about this film. The antagonist, Xenon, the theory is that it's a transliteration of the chemical element xenon, which is funny because that's a noble gas, but he's a villain.
God.
Yeah, that was fun. So thanks, Wikizilla, for that
Well,
one.
like a noble gas, they didn't change any of the material.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, guys, let's be honest, we're just going to have fun with this episode. There's not going to, I have a feeling there's not going to be much depth here. It's a holiday episode, so, you know.
We're here to have fun.
Yeah, we're here to have fun. This is, you know, for context, we've been friends for 7 years now. This is the first time we've ever met. It's not from lack of trying, it's just this is how it played out. But, so I'm trying to remember, like, because we met back when Tumblr wasn't such a cesspool.
Uh-huh.
And you could actually do productive things on there. So that was 2012. But
Before Yahoo.
mm-hmm. Yeah, before Yahoo bought it. Yeah, I was like, Yahoo was around. But I think it was when... Because when was Force Awakens actually announced?
I think it was in 12.
Yeah. But then it was 2014 that we got the first trailer right around Thanksgiving, right?
Black Friday.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that's when we really started talking more. Like, I mean, we always talked, but I think it was like, I got so excited. I was like, I forgot how much I loved Star Wars.
Uh-huh.
And then I was like, oh, Chris really loves Star Wars.
Yeah.
And, yeah, so I mean, we kept talking, and obviously with Force Awakens coming out, and we had Rogue One, we tried starting a podcast, which is still listenable, at least for the last few episodes,
Yeah.
I think. I don't think all of them are. But that's 1001 Jedi Knights, and that was fun. It was just, we didn't really have a plan.
No. And the proliferation of Star Wars podcasts didn't make... Like, without a hook, we didn't have...
No.
We, like, thought we were going to talk about older stuff that was already... Like, that had already moved out of the conversation, but there's a reason that stuff moved out of the conversation. Like, we tried the Heir to the Jedi, and then after we made a noodle joke 4 times, I was like, okay, that's about all we got from this book.
Yeah, well, I didn't even read that one.
Oh, well.
Yeah.
Well, no wonder we didn't get anything out of it.
Yeah. Yeah, because remember we had talked about going through propaganda.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that would have actually been fun. I still need to go through that again. Yeah, I think that was it. Is we just didn't feel like there was a reason for us to really do the podcast, and it's not that we didn't want to talk and develop that friendship, but we both were in grad school as well. I had just started a job going to 50, 60 hours a week as well, and it was hard to maintain that. It really was. So but I think we always toyed with like, how do we get back into this, right? And I think now where I was like, hey, do you want to do this? And I had to sell you on it pretty hard.
Yeah.
But it's been fun.
Very true.
It's been fun. I've gotten a lot out of it. I'm really excited to get into the newer films because I think you're going to help me appreciate them more. But yeah, so that's kind of, today's been a big deal. So this should be fun. So even if it's just for the sake of us doing a podcast together, it'll, I'm excited.
It'll still be and I think it's fun that we're watching a kind of crappy one together. If we were watching like a super like intellectual one, I would be like super self-conscious watching you take notes, and I'm like, monster. But like having this one be the one together, because who knows, we've said like before, we don't have much to talk about this one, but then King Kong versus Godzilla, the 2020 film, was our longest discussion. And
God, you're the worst. You're the worst.
Yeah, if you haven't seen that yet, I highly recommend it.
Yeah, by this point, I still, like, I had made the joke that it's going to come out on Netflix like Cloverfield Paradox.
Oh, yeah.
That would be so bad if it did. Yeah, I think by the end of this film, my only note's going to be, I like Turtles.
Yeah. Oh,
so,
man.
But yeah, let's go ahead and turn this bad boy on, and we will be back after the jump. We'll catch you. What was it? How does Michael Scott say it? Catch you on the flippity flip.
Catch you on the flip. Yeah.
Are we still alive?
I think so. I feel like we probably came out better than Henry. Like, this wasn't actually a truly abysmal movie. It was rough.
Yeah. That's, so, obviously not having any exposure to Gamera before this, what were your thoughts going into it? Probably should have asked that before we watched this. So, kind of a palate cleanser here. What were you expecting?
Kind of something else. Like, I thought, well, even just at the beginning, that started talking about, like, humans are not the only creatures that war with itself. So it's kind of like, okay, so there might be a theme going on here. There might be something. I honestly thought this was going to be just like a Godzilla ripoff. Like, it was like Godzilla with a different monster skin. But I was pleasantly surprised. But yeah, when it talked about like spacemen, and I thought there would be anything else, any sort of alien presence other than the four mostly human women and Gamera and the Star Destroyer. Like, the opening scene being the remake of the opening scene from A New Hope was hilarious.
Yeah, I mean, it's very clear, at least with the space women, this is a prototype for Sailor Moon. That's how I just felt the entire time.
Yeah, because, well, and the thing is, we understand from the beginning they're space women. And they're superheroes. They, like, we see them fly, like, right away. But all they really do is fly and wait for Gamera to save them. I'm really confused what their whole purpose was. Like, why did they have to have superpowers? Why did they have to have magical organs? All they did was fly to the van that they really could have apparently walked to because it was on top of the building they worked in.
Yeah, the organ part was definitely weird. The thing that probably tripped me up the most was like the whole Xanon character.
Uh-huh.
So I'm looking here. So on Wikizilla it says, confusingly, the name Xanon is given to 3 different things in the movie. It is first used to refer to the alien invading Earth, then used to refer to a ship, but then later Garuge refers to the Kaiju virus as Xanon, possibly suggesting that Xanon is of the same species as Virus.
Oh
but since neither Xanon or his crew, there's no way to confirm that. So
wait, which one? So there's like that Star Destroyer.
Virus was the squid one.
So it's the Star Destroyer full of squids. This is what
Apparently,
it's supposed to be.
It's the prequel to Squidbillies.
Oh my goodness. Oh, that's a deep hole. Let's whatever. Like, we got 3 monsters in that were directly linked to the Xanon. And then the one whose name's Xanon, but they nothing else. They just kept showing up eventually.
Yeah. So apparently they were able to control these monsters, and so yeah. Let's just talk about the film. As we already discussed, this film existed to try to get Dai out of a financial situation, which, from what I can tell, did not happen. I could be wrong. So really the only original footage in this film is of the boy, who seems to be like some weird sex cult leader, because he's always referring to people as sisters, but it's like weird flirtatious, like, yeah, it was a very weird dynamic in this. So the kid, and then the 3 alien women who are, like I said, Sailor Moon prototypes, and then the Garuge lady who had the ketchup gun, and then the mom. So like the humans are obviously original, but all the monster fights are stock footage from the previous films, and then apparently they bought a Gamera toy and used him to fly in space. And then the freaking the flying train, that was strange.
Like one of 2 anime scenes.
Yeah, it was kind of like, hey, let's I don't know, was Studio Ghibli a thing back then? Because that's kind of what it reminded me of.
That's what I'm trying to figure out. So they explicitly read a Shonen Jump magazine, and I'm like trying to figure out, he sees an anime pirate ship decades before One Piece, and then he sees like a space anime train fly into a different planet from Earth with no commentary whatsoever about where the train is going, the origin of the train, or why Kaichi was dreaming about it. It's just an anime train halfway through the movie. Yeah.
Maybe that's... Yeah, so apparently Studio Ghibli wasn't founded till 1985, so maybe that was inspiration for that. Yeah, I mean, the film itself, there was no substance at all. I mean, I think the only thing that it even tried to have message-wise was, if strangers offer you to buy you hamburgers, you should go.
You should go. Absolutely.
Yeah. What else did I get from that? Turtles are meant to live in the river, not pet stores. But if you run a pet store and you're an alien woman, just give your pets away for free.
Because who knows what your alien pet might turn into the world-saving kaiju.
Exactly. What else? Apparently playing the Gamera song on the organ is... Yeah. I'm like really struggling here. There was something about like non-violence for like 10 seconds. Yeah. I was like, oh, maybe they're not going anywhere with that.
Like, the space women are prohibited from having a weapon of any kind. Even to the point where they won't touch it to remove Garuge's when she drops it.
Yeah.
But...
Yeah. That was it. The freaking, the main space woman, So apparently she's a wrestler at that time, and that was actually the most interesting part, was the fight between the space women.
Yeah.
You know, like, it was actually like they were throwing each other, and it seemed like the evil space woman Guruge was actually doing the backflips, which was pretty impressive. Like, I was not expecting that.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we were like, what, 6 or 7 kaiju fights in. Mm-hmm. And suddenly the women start punching at each other. And then they, like, flip each other. But, like, most of the punches were kind of, like, in the general direction.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, I'm into this now. But...
yeah. It's interesting to me. Like, I don't know what the budget was. I wasn't even really able to find that online. You know, I'll look again here really quick. But for me, the whole film, it's just one of those things where I understand, like, you've got to make money, right? But it's one of those films where I'm like, how could anyone put a stamp of approval on this? I mean, this is easily... You say we got off easy, like... this was so bad. Like, this has genuinely discouraged me from, like, wanting to watch the other Gamera films. Like, because I did as a kid, so that's my context. Is like, I grew up watching Gamera films. Granted, they were the dubs, but, you know, so I remember, you know, Gamera vs. Giron and Gauss and Zigra. Like, those were the ones that I watched the most growing up. And, I mean, as a kid, they were fun. And I know they're not horrible films, but, like, I just forgot, like, how low budget these films are. So this just, like, really solidified the fact that, like, they did well for what they were, but it's almost like they did well in spite of what they were.
Oh, yeah. Well, because whatever this one offered in terms of plot was kind of abandoned for 5-minute fight scenes. Mm-hmm. And fight scenes that weren't even really introduced by the end. Like, when he fights the one with the sword head. Just suddenly he's on the planet that houses monsters. No context other than he's there.
Yeah.
He fights him, gets cut open a few times, and throws a rock at his
Does
knife.
a little pole dancing.
Oh, yeah. Can we please just talk about all of the monsters he boarded?
Yeah. It was there was a few kind of suggestive. I'm like, oh, Gamera is getting a little lonely here. He's just we need to teach Gamera about consent. Yeah, so that was it. It was like every single monster for the most part was hindered by the fact that they had horns and spikes, and Gamera would throw a rock at them and it would get stuck.
Perfectly aimed to get stuck right on their horn.
Yeah, but I felt bad for Giron, though. You know, he's just hanging out on his planet, and Gamera shows up like a complete jerk and just kills him.
He doesn't seem to be causing any problems.
Not at all.
It seemed like, if I remember it, Gamera was there first. Or, well, Gamera, like, comes there to just straight up attack him. Like, he's just chilling.
Yeah.
He has to come out of his hole, and... I'm very curious, like, it's introduced the planet that holds the monsters. Yet every single other one is a very Earth-based monster. So there's this planet that exists that holds monsters. The Gamera's like, screw this planet in particular.
Yep. Yeah, so I just think my favorite part of the movie is just the music. Like, there's that one point. So this whole time, I mean, it was bad. I was just acting like it was an episode of Mystery Science Theater 3000, except my jokes were not good at all. But having all the music, like, it just felt like Dragon Ball the whole time I'm watching it. So it's kind of hard not to make jokes about that.
Yeah. Gamera Ball Z. It was truly the Gamera March every 5 minutes. Mm-hmm. And it wouldn't even, like, be timed well with the scene. The scene had started, and about a minute in, they start playing the march. Which we hear at least 3 different versions of the march, because there's the ultra long introductory part where the woman sings it. Then Kaichi pretends that he wrote it, and we have to listen to the song in its entirety twice. And then all 7 monster fights have
This is the actual Gamera march.
Oh.
This is like, yeah.
This one's more upbeat, but it feels less like puppy.
Yeah, it was, this is the budget version is what we got.
Yeah, because when he starts playing the, what was it, Yankee Doodle?
Oh, gosh.
At the beginning of the episode, shows organ skills. It's like, what film distribution property does not have its own music library to access?
Yeah.
Oh.
I'm just, can we be done talking about this? I mean, it doesn't help that it's 12:30 in the morning right now.
Yeah.
But Henry, you're the absolute worst for making us do this. I really hope we don't lose listeners for this episode. I mean, we're really trying to salvage this as much as we can. Do you have any thoughts before we... I'm bushed.
Yeah. I just really can't get over the fact that this movie builds its whole premise on the space women. We see them morph like eight different times just to not do... Yeah, it's like this hugely choreographed dance. There's no call. There's no, like... It's just a little jig. And they kind of sometimes just morph. Just to, like, unmorph 20 seconds later.
Yeah. They morphed, and then they're like, oh, no, we're about to get shot. So then they did, like, a somersault and then unmorphed.
Yeah.
Or maybe they unmorphed then somersaulted. I can't remember. But a lot of somersaults.
Truly, they have matching superhero outfits. Like, they look like the Wonder Twins from the old Justice League cartoon.
There we go. That's what I was trying to figure it out. Yeah.
Deeper V's and much thicker...
Consummate V's.
And much thicker granny panties under those because...
You went there.
I really had to.
Yeah.
If you just Google Space Women from Gamera and... Just because I don't want you to watch this movie to see what they look like.
Let's see if that actually pulls anything up. Space Woman, Gamera. Yep. So Gamera, the Space Woman dance. So there you go.
So you don't need to worry about your content filters.
Yeah, it is crazy. Like, they're very deep V's, very fashionable. So clearly, H&M kind of went back to this.
But it's amazing that the V's are so deep, yet they feel like the least sexual costumes I've ever seen.
Yeah. Do we even want to release this episode?
Yeah, we do.
It's so bad. Okay, so to try to salvage this episode, we had discussed previously that we wanted to kind of talk a little bit of methodology with how we've been doing this, and I think we can keep it pretty short.
Yeah.
So Chris, at least for you, when you've been watching these films, I've been listening, that's a little context, I've been listening to a lot of Monsters vs. Men, it's a podcast, and they've been going through the Godzilla films, and I had messaged them today even, I was like, I'm so glad that, we're not doing a podcast where we're just reviewing films, right? Yeah. Because there's already plenty of them out there, and plus, I don't want to just watch a film just to review it. Not that there's anything wrong with that. That's not what I want to do. So, on your end, kind of what's been your approach when you watch these films? Why do you think having these conversations is important?
Yeah, well, I think in terms of first, how I watch the movies, and I tweeted about this in reference to episode 9 this morning, but, at least for me, in our postmodern, post-textual world, we think about, whatever the authorial intent was, which we've very clearly covered. Really
quick, what do you, for people who aren't familiar with postmodernity,
get a philosophy degree. Just thinking about, we've kind of rejected meta-narratives. We reject this idea that, texts have meaning, that that there's one single meaning, so we've kind of imbued every text with its own meaning that we discover. And if there's authorial intent, it's important, but it's not the driving force anymore. Mm-hmm. So we're kind of giving ourselves a little free rein to say the movie, we have like for Gamera, we know why it was created. It was created to get this company out of debt, and hopefully it helped, but it was not on its own merits. It was on saving money.
It was Mazda.
Yeah, it was the Mazda and Shonen Jump advertisers that. Well, and then the really extreme, there's one scene where they knock over a Godzilla poster, and the camera pans in to make sure we see that the Godzilla poster is fallen.
The music abruptly changes too.
It's so abrupt, and it abruptly changes back. But we know the reason this movie was created, but we can also talk about what does it mean in the context of the podcast, or when we get back into our regular series in this next couple weeks, we can look at each movie individually, which we do. We talk about the individual themes of the movie, if they have any. But then, it's so much more interesting to pull them into the conversation of the other Godzilla movies. Mm-hmm. So it's was King Kong versus Godzilla, the original this time, made with the intent of being analyzed in the context of the others? Probably not. Most movie-going audiences probably couldn't tell you what happened in the previous Godzilla movie, let alone the latest Godzilla or King Kong TV show episode or whatever. But I mean, we've found a lot more rich to see how many times this time the military failed, the next time military failed, this time it worked. What was the difference? What can we learn from looking into the backgrounds? What can we learn about maybe what Godzilla, the franchise, is trying to say, if anything? Because different films might have one message, the franchise might have another. Mm-hmm. Without going into spoilers, you could say episodes 8 and 9 of Star Wars have different themes, but technically, if we want to talk about it as a saga, no, they are somehow conjoined. So even with this one trying to introduce themes very briefly, very saying we're not the only ones who fight each other, there are other people, and then not picking that up, it tried.
Yeah.
But we can kind of bring that idea into other episodes if we wanted to, but we're probably going to Men in Black mind wipe ourselves from this one afterwards.
Yeah, first of all, I forgot that we saw Star Wars tonight because of this film.
It was the longest 90 minutes of my life.
Yeah. Yeah, that was long. But, something that you're saying here that I think we're kind of taking the approach to is, we're so used to franchises now, right? Because even at this point, I'm trying to remember, do you know when the Bond films started?
Well, they were at least in color, right? Mm-hmm. So...
Yeah, so the first Bond film was Dr. No, so that was 1962. So right there, we started seeing a franchise there, right? Whether it was intended to be that way or not, I don't know. Get it? So I'm not confident about that. But franchises then are substantially different than they are now, right? Because now the whole goal is a shared universe. So Marvel, Star Wars...
Ghostbusters.
The
Dark Universe, rest in peace.
Yeah, but even the CW comic book shows now, right? So the goal is to have pieces of media that interlock and are connected and are relatively coherent as well and all that. So with these films, it's pretty clear that when Gojira was made, it was not with the intent of spawning a franchise of films that has spanned over the course of 65 years, right? Very clear that was not the case. So it's very anachronistic or historically inaccurate, right? To go back and be okay, and that's kind of part of my problem is Toho's done that, but when you try to make all of these films fit within a shared universe, it doesn't really work. But that's part of the creative liberties we're taking is okay, well, what if these films are connected, right? Because they do have, some of the same directors and writers and producers behind everything. So there is a sense of coherency there, but being able to look at the film individually, but then also within the context of the franchise as a whole, and that's really kind of, it's nice to have that freedom, right? Instead of just nope, it was made for this and this and this, and you can't deviate from this. And because I even think, so theologically, the way that we read the Bible, you're more familiar with this than I am, but with Richard Hayes, he's a New Testament scholar. I mean, he's pretty emphatic on the fact that Paul would take Old Testament scripture and not necessarily rework it, but there was almost a creative license that he had in order to take these texts that had nothing to say about Jesus explicitly, but show that like there were, I know he uses the word echoes, right?
Yeah.
But he uses these texts to show Jesus now. And it's not that you're being dishonest or disgenuine with that, because you're still consistent with your overall narrative of the Christian story, right? But it's definitely not like this reading of the text that most Protestants have, where it's just this flat reading. Like there's no interlocking between the Old Testament and the New Testament. It's so divided up that for the most part, I mean, most Christians don't even want anything to do with the Old Testament.
Well, yeah, their Bible starts on page 1000. So,
yeah.
Well, and I think that's the difference, is we would say maybe the Bible is it front-loaded, that I'm trying to say? Like, the Old Testament does have the ability to be opened up later. Like, for the most part, when Paul plays with the Old Testament, it's not necessarily completely out of left field.
Yeah.
Like, you think of Galatians 3, when he plays on the Greek term sperma, saying no, it's only to a singular, not a plural. It's like, well, that wasn't what I was reading when I read Genesis, but that's not the point. Like, he's still playing well within the rules, and we can say we're doing similar things. It's just when they made Gojira, they had would they have made a different film had they known about sequels coming up? And it doesn't seem like it. Like, they said what they needed to say, and what would the alternative be? The oxygen destroyer doesn't get him, he kind of winks before he swims away. Like,
Right.
So we're playing with Godzilla in a way that we wouldn't necessarily say is exactly the same way we're playing with the Bible, but the idea of reading backwards, saying, how does this new information reinterpret old information? Like, we do that all the time. Like, if we like have an event where I tripped in Walmart, all I know right then is that I tripped. But then later I see the wet floor sign. Later I see the puddle. Like, we're constantly reinterpreting past events anyway with new information.
Yeah.
So why not with movies? Like, I would be shocked if too many directors were like, wow, you're finding new meaning in my movies? Better just drop it. Leave it. Like, I had one thing to say.
Yeah. But I mean, we're even going through that with episode 9, right? Now we're going to go back and watch not only episode 7 and 8, but we're going to go back and watch the prequels. And we're going to go, and those meanings weren't necessarily there initially, but it doesn't mean that these aren't valid interpretations now, right?
Yeah.
It's all within the so-called canon. But I think for me, the important thing in all of this is like, I'm trying to think of the right word. So we don't really get an authorial intent with these films the way that I think we would like. Because like one of the things I think about is the reason Gojira starred as a film was created was to attest to the horrors of nuclear warfare, right? As we've progressed in these films, that message has changed. But there's part of me that wonders, like, okay, like, did Ishiro Honda even want to keep making these films? Not saying that, like, he didn't, but I kind of have to wonder, like, the man that made a gripping film about the horrors of war is also the man that's going to make a science fiction film called Invasion of the Astro Monster, right? And it's not that, like, you can't make two different films. That's not it.
Right.
But it's the same character where we've taken a monster that is symbolic of human hubris and turned him into a borderline superhero.
Yeah.
You know, so at what point has that changed? And having the ability to have those discussions, because I think within the fandom, it can be really reductionist, where you probably haven't seen this as much, Chris, but, you know, the Showa films are considered campy and silly and all that stuff, which I think we've talked, a lot of that has to do with dubs over subs, right? But there's a certain element where I agree with that. But at the same time, I'm just like, maybe there's a reason for that, right?
Yeah.
And, obviously we start gravitating in the 60s and 70s towards more TV-based material. That's when you see
Sure.
Ultra Q and Ultraman. And that's when you see Gamera as well. There's a shift towards kids.
Yeah.
Even though, granted, what was kid appropriate in the 70s and 60s is much different than now.
Absolutely.
So yeah, it's just our goal, and I know we've said it numerous times, but I think this is probably going to be the most succinct or explicit, not succinct, spot on this podcast is just like these films. It's more than just parsing out nuclear warfare over and over again. It's really, we're watching films that are a product of their time. And like anything, when you divorce those films from that context, you really miss out on a lot. And it's not that you can't enjoy it, right? I mean, if you go back and, I'm not super familiar with it at all, but like the original Frankenstein novel, right? That was in the 1800s. Like, obviously reading it now, it would have been substantially different reading it when it came out, right?
Sure.
And I think of any novel that's written within a context, within history, like real world events help shape this literature that passes through generation to generation through generation. And it doesn't mean that it can't say something different to each generation, but it doesn't also nullify what it said originally. And when you take that original meaning, that's not going to take away from your interpretation now. If anything, it should only enhance and embolden it, right?
Well, and I think we can talk about Knives Out as being a very 2019 film. Mm-hmm. And some of the meaning might get lost in about 10 years.
Yeah.
Because we might have moved on from Trumpian discourse. But it's still a very contextual film that watching, even if there's a new president next year, is going to feel very different. Mm-hmm. But there are definitely some remarks that I heard on Twitter in the past 3 years, but once Twitter dies, we're going to lose that context and just think we have no idea whom they're talking about. But yeah. I think one of the things that we also keep in mind is like there's an issue of like authorial authority, which I made that up on the spot, so that's why it's such an awkward phrase. But like, who has the authority to reinterpret old films? Like you had mentioned that episode 9 is going to make us rewatch episodes 1 through 8, but J.J. Abrams didn't make all of them. I think the maker. He only made 2 of them, but he has the authority vested in him by Lucasfilm to force us to reinterpret the past films. Yeah. So, at the same way, the directors continuing to make sequels are on their own authority reinterpreting the first couple. Yeah. Because they have the authority to say, well, Godzilla, who used to be a villain, is now our quasi-military ally superhero. Mm-hmm. So we're not playing on an authority that we've just, 2 Timothy 2:12, authority we've grasped for ourselves. Well, this is an authority that the directors have taken, and we're just playing in that same kind of space, too. So. Yeah.
Well, and that's something I've thought about as well, where, we're having this podcast because we want to share a deeper meaning of these films, right? But like, we don't even have the authority to tell you this is how you need to watch them. Yeah. We're going to make our case, sure. But at the end of the day, like, you have to make that decision yourself. Now, you don't have the authority to change what it really meant, right? In the same way that we don't. And we're trying to be as researched and educated about these things as possible. But at the end of the day, like, yeah, you have to make that decision where, you're saying even too, well, obviously J.J. Abrams was able to do episode 9. Therefore, that's on one hand changed what all the other films meant. But on the other hand, like, you don't have to watch them differently. You can choose to not watch this film and everything else stays the same, right? Or you could watch it and be like, nope, I reject that interpretation. Yeah. And it's not that truth isn't an actual thing. But I think that's the thing about truth, too, with like objectivity and subjectivity in film is at the end of the day, I think there are objective truths about art and cinema. Yeah. But am I willing to... It's weird. Am I willing to objectively look at objectivity? Mm-hmm. And I don't think most of the time I am. I'll be honest. So that's the thing is with film, I think there's objectivity for sure. Like, is that an actual, like, is this film well shot? You know, does the pacing work well for the story? There's all these different things that still have subjective elements to it, but ultimately, like, a film could be bad, but you still choose to like it.
Yeah.
And a film can be good and you can reject it.
Yeah.
So really, this whole thing is just an exercise to try to, like, encourage conversation and encourage humility as well.
Yeah.
Like, I know on my end, I've tried to tone down my opinions on stuff because I'm like, I feel this way, but at the end of the day, I'm not the final word on this, right?
And I, on the other hand, have been sharing every bad opinion that comes to mind. So
Yeah, that's for sure. So yeah, I was gonna share my thoughts on, like, what even got me down this road, but I still just don't feel ready to do that yet.
yeah, so we've got a little, like, bait, keep everyone listening.
Yeah. I'll just tell you guys this. So when I first felt inspired to start this project, which was a blog, as some of you know, it was because I watched GMK, or Giant Monsters, you know, Godzilla, Mothra, King Ghidorah. It's 1:00. I can't think of the name. I'm such a bad fan.
Godzilla 1998.
Yeah, that one. So anyway, when I watched that film, there's just really there's two scenes, but like one set of scenes that I just blew my mind, right? And I'm like, holy crap, this symbology is awesome. And I'm like, I need to go back and start watching these films because there is more. And that's what got me going down this path, right? So anyway, I have been researching that interpretation of this film for over a year now. Haven't found a single thing about it at all. And I was fortunate enough to be able to chat with someone briefly on Twitter who knows the director of that film, Kaneko, and or is it Kaneko? I don't know. Typical American.
Yeah.
And I had shared that interpretation with him. I was just like, I don't feel like it was necessarily intentional, but I'd be curious to hear your thoughts. And the reply was that, wow, I've never heard that thought before, right? And this is someone who was on the set for this film and knows the director personally. And there was no promises, but he was like, hey, if I remember, you know, I'll run that by him. And that was incredibly humbling for me. So if you're listening to this, you know who you are. Very thankful that you even took the time to chat with me. But I bring all of that up because that's kind of the point, right? That was not an intentional thing the director did in the film, from what this person can tell. And even from what I can tell, it doesn't seem like it's very intentional. But at the end of the day, it doesn't mean it's an invalid interpretation.
Right.
So, you know, let's look at it on the flip side is you watch a film and you like it because of the monster fights, right?
Yep.
That's awesome. You know, I may not see it that way anymore, you know, but I think there's a difference between I watch a film for the action and I don't like the human storyline. That's a valid approach to a film. Mm-hmm. The invalid approach to the film is the humans don't matter. It's never been about the humans. Humans are just monster fodder, right? Stuff like that where you can still feel that way, but it's objectively false.
Yeah.
So our hope is that by the time we're done with this project, we can help people see like, hey, like the film for what you like, right? But at the end of the day, just like we've said numerous times, just be honest about what the film is.
Yeah.
You know, it wouldn't make sense for me to watch a film like even Knives Out, right? And I'm like, that was the best Fast and Furious movie there was. You're like, wait,
Right.
what? That's just objectively false. Or
Yeah.
for me to say that, you know, I watch Knives Out and it was, I'm trying to think of something just outlandishly false, right? I mean, it's just, at the end of the day, the movie is the movie. You can interpret it different ways, get different things out of it, but there's still some objectivity that to appreciate a film, you have to be willing to acknowledge. Now, what you do with that, you don't have to like it.
Yeah.
You don't have to agree with it. you can interpret it even a different way, but it doesn't mean that the actual thing isn't what it is.
Right. What we're doing is acknowledging that there was something that was trying to be said. There was a point, but we're kind of operating with the hope that these movies might accidentally have more to say.
Yeah.
Because anything that we say, we might have a point, but we might have said something insightful that we missed that someone else picked up on. So
Exactly.
we like to think that these movies are better than just a 90-minute slugfest, that there was something trying to be said, and maybe there's accidentally more. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, do you want to do our favorite ship? I mean, pour one out?
Man, who is my favorite death? That's good.
I'm going to go with their van hideout, which they just happened to not be in.
Yeah.
Or they exploded out of it. But their van that was like garishly brightly orange that was parked in a parking garage, not in a parking space.
It was on top of the garage.
I was on top of the garage, but like kind of in the corner, not in the space. And it took about 3/4 of the movie for the supervillain to figure out where they lived, even though it was clearly marked as the same business she knew they worked at.
You mean the van where the spacemen were like, "Hey boy, do you want to come in here and see where we live?"
And they showed them their tiny bedroom where they stand all night, I guess.
Yeah. Well, remember they were in the little
lunchbox.
little lunchbox. Yeah, I'm struggling. I mean, I'm probably gonna have to go with Zigra. So not only was his back dorsal spines used as like a makeshift xylophone, but like he was just roasted. I mean, there's like nothing left of him.
Oh yeah,
by the time he was done.
Okay, I will say I loved how consistently his back spikes played the same note. Unlike the episode of Itchy and Scratchy, where the different bones play different notes, if it was a magical skeleton.
Man, so that part with Jiger or whatever, I don't remember his name, but like when he used his parabolic laser and like they turned into skeletons, that was gruesome.
Yeah, he uses like a spotlight laser to burn everyone to shreds.
Yeah,
but he leaves their skeletons standing the same pose they died in.
Yeah, I mean that'd be
like picked clean.
That'd be super convenient for like people who, you know, they'll find those dead animals and like they'll take the bones and position them and stuff. That'd be super handy. Like just get them to sit still.
Taxidermist coming from Jiger. Yeah. That's distressing, but
yeah. So yeah, I mean we're almost at an hour. Strange.
Amazing.
Yeah, I know. So before we close and do the bumper, do you have a 10-second summary on your current feelings for The Rise of Skywalker?
For 10 seconds.
Okay.
But I won't do that to our listeners.
Yeah. I'm just going to say, considering the fact all the different variables involved, I mean, at the end of the day, when you're ran into a corner, there's only so much you can do. Even if you wrote yourself in the corner several years ago.
Yeah, you did this yourself.
Yeah. But, I mean, I didn't walk away hating it.
Yeah.
So that's about as much as I can ask for.
Well, maybe I'll share what I said to you right after. It was exactly the movie I was afraid it was going to be. But I wasn't as disappointed in that as I thought I would be.
Yeah.
Like, nothing about it challenged me. Nothing about it went... It, like, the way, you know, Luke, for The Last Jedi, nothing will go the way you expect. Everything went the way I expected.
Yeah. Yeah. I will say they kind of did touch back on one of the things I talked to you about with episode 7, where, you know, Finn's a child soldier. And I'm like, oh, they kind of brought that back up for 10 seconds, and they didn't do anything else with it. That would have been nice to see that explored a little bit more.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
But, so, if you've listened this whole time, or maybe you skipped ahead to the timestamp I told you, we appreciate listening. If this is your first episode, I'm so sorry.
Every episode is somehow someone's first.
Yeah. I definitely promise our other ones are more informative, more coherent. We're usually
more shipping.
Yeah, definitely. Can I just say, like, I really hope this ends stan culture within Star Wars fandom, like, that we can be done with this.
Oh,
I'm
thought you
over
meant
that.
standing kaiju.
No, I just, in general.
I was like, no, I'm still gonna stand Gauss for the rest of my life.
Oh, I know. Yeah, Gauss is looking so hot right now.
That Gauss so hot right now.
So yeah, we're excited. So next episode we're doing one of my personal favorites, Atragon. This is going to be a lot of fun. Then we'll get back. I think from there should be a few more Godzilla films.
Is it? Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. So I think it's Mothra versus Godzilla after that.
Right.
So yeah, seriously, thank you so much for listening. We do have a Patreon page that we just launched this week. As you've already heard, we've had several patrons that we're very appreciative of. If that's something that you would feel led to support us, it's just patreon.com/kaijuapostlepod. We've got everything outlined there, why we're doing it. We're under no delusions of grandeur that this is going to be a job for us making that money. It just helps offset costs for recording the podcast. Apart from that, we want to hear from you, right? That's been one of my favorite things about handling the social media accounts on Instagram and Twitter is the interactions we have with y'all. I can't stress that enough. I mean, if it was just there's no point of having the downloads and the likes and the retweets if we're not actually having these conversations. So don't be a stranger. I mean, we'd love to hear feedback as well, right? I mean, if there's something on one of our previous episodes that you think we're wrong on, let us know. We'd be happy to definitely not argue.
Wrong.
Chris, we'd be happy to have that conversation with you, whether it's privately or even on the podcast, sharing some thoughts.
Yeah, definitely also submit questions.
Yeah.
Please. Like, as movie specific as possible, but I think we can allow backlog questions too. If you have, like, a burning question about Mothra, like, feel free to submit it, but we want to be talking about what you want to listen to as well.
Mm-hmm.
So, if you've got burning questions, like, who would win in a fight between Gauss and my love, who knows?
Who is your love?
Right now, Jiger, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
But
yeah.
Anyway, it's late.
It is late.
It's the morning.
So, like I said, we do have Twitter and Instagram pages. Both our handle is Kaiju Apostle Pod. Same with Facebook. But as I've said once, and I'll say it again, that place is just for political debates. So
we're the ones having them.
Yeah, we very rarely update there. And then if you do like our podcast, if we haven't scared you away, I think it's really only Apple Podcasts that really takes reviews.
Yeah.
Those do go a long way because they help us get further up on the charts. Helps people feel confident enough to invest their time into listening.
And then we'll prove them wrong.
Yeah. Yeah. I swear to God, I'm so excited to get back on track next week. Seriously, guys, thank you so much, and I am going to bed.
Yes. Good night. Good morning.
守れこの地球友達がいる仲間がいる友情がある愛がある戦えガメラ火を吐けガメラ愛せ